Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo 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 Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Welcome to Mantra 4, Sri Isopanisad. The thematic divisions of Isopanisad. So now we're getting into the second sort of theme of the Isopanisad. The first one was mantras 1 to 3, how to live in harmony with Ishvara. So all of those verses that we covered was actually teaching us how to live in harmony with Ishvara, who is none other than Lord Shri Krishna. Then now from mantras 4 to 8, the theme there is devotion enables us to see the Lord. The only way Krishna can be approached is via devotion. Then mantras 9 to 11 will show the correct and incorrect knowledge for understanding the Ishwar. And mantras 12 to 14, the correct and incorrect worship of Ishwar. And then from 15 to 19, the prayers of longing for Ishwar to reveal himself. So after all of this knowledge, something has to awaken in the heart that would lead us deeper to Krishna. And that door can only be opened from within of the practitioner. So mantra number 4. Anejad ekam manaso javiyo.
Anejad ekam manaso javiyo.
Anejad ekam manaso javiyo.
Anejad ekam manaso javiyo.
Naina deva apnuvan purvam arsat. Tadvatonyan atyati tishtat. Tasmin napo matarisva dadati. Anejadekam manaso javiyo. Naina deva apnuvan purvat arshad. Tadavato anyanatyeti tishtat. Tasmin napo matarisva dadati. Anye jadekam manaso javiyo. Naina deva apnuvan purvam arshad. Tadvatonyan yati tishat. Tasmin napo matarishavadhadati. Although fixed in his abode, the personality of Godhead is swifter than the mind and can overcome all others running. The powerful demigods cannot approach him, although in one place he controls those who supply the air and rain. He surpasses all in excellence. So yet again, Krishna's magnificence is being told to us. I sent you this revision. I hope you find some time in your day, in your week, next week, and go through this. And I suggested that you keep a notebook either on your phone or on your hard copy, and try to answer these questions. So every week we'll try to give you some questions. So like that, we don't just pass the book. We don't know when again in life we're going to come across this book again. So might as well solidify the understanding in our hearts. Today, many people are celebrating Guru Purnima, and the best way we can worship the Guru is with our intelligence, with buddhi. And Prabhupada said the best of him is in his purpose. So he said, if you feel at all indebted to me, then we should imbibe his teachings, practice it, and distribute it. He didn't want us to just distribute it, but he wanted us to imbibe it also. So, purport by Srila Prabhupada. Through mental speculation, even the great, you can read, Prabhu, loud and clear.
Through mental speculation, even the greatest philosopher cannot know the Supreme Lord, who is the absolute personality of Godhead. He can be known only by his devotees through his mercy. In the Brahma Samhita 534, it is stated that even if a non-devotee philosopher travels through space at the speed of wind or the mind for hundreds of millions of years, he will still find that the absolute truth is far, far away from him.
Okay, very, very important points here. Through mental speculation, even a great philosopher will not get to know Krishna. The Prabhupada gave the example to show how people in India, when the steam train just came about, how they first saw the smoke and they thought, this is the train. So some people who were waiting, everyone had gathered on the platform to see this new invention of the train. So when they saw the steam, the smoke in a distance, some people ran home to go tell them, we saw the train, we saw the train. It's actually white smoke that comes in a certain way. Then the other people that stayed, from the other group of people that remained, some people noticed after a while there's this huge light, the headlight. They saw the huge light and they went to go, ran home to tell everyone that the train is actually this huge light. And then other people, they stayed on the platform for yet longer with greater patience, and they were able to see there's a coach that's joined to another coach, etc. And yet and furthermore, others could enter the train, travel by it, and disseminate more complete knowledge of what the train actually was. So Prabhupada gave this example to explain that to understand Krishna in his various stages, the impersonal Brahman, the localized Paramatma aspect, the personalized aspect as Bhagavan, there is actually a gradation. So we cannot settle for that which is incomplete. Now, the greatest philosophers sometimes they cannot understand Krishna because Krishna cannot be understood by armchair philosophy. Prabhupada explained, right? You have to feel Krishna. It's a different experience as from simply textbook knowledge. Then he can only be known by his devotees or through his mercy. Krishna himself, when he showed Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, in the 11th chapter, he showed Arjuna his universal form. This magnificent form with thousands of heads and hands and mouths and all the soldiers entering into the mouth from the coat of army, etc. And at that point in time, he said to Arjuna, only by unalloyed devotional service can I be understood as I am standing before you. It is not by any other means that one can actually get to know Krishna, but only by devotional service. And here Prabhupada is saying that in the Brahma Samhita, even if non-devotee philosophers travel through space at the speed of wind or mind for hundreds and millions of years, you will find that the absolute truth is far, far away from him. So there's no physical distance that you can measure how far Krishna is from you, right? Because where's Krishna? Is also within you. So it's not that Krishna can be found externally or just internally. He's inside, he's outside, he's everywhere. But to recognize him and to feel his reciprocation, there's a delineated path of bhakti that comes in a disciplic succession. Srila Prabhupada continues in that beautiful purport. The Brahma Samhita further describes that the absolute personality of Godhead has his transcendental abode known as Goloka, where he remains engaged and engages in his pastimes. Yet by his inconceivable potencies, he can simultaneously reach every part of the creative energy. In Vishnu Purana, his potencies are compared to the heat and light that emanate from fire. So we may have a fire burning right here, and that fire is not moving through this entire room, but its heat and light may reach the passage even. So even though Krishna exists in his abode, he's the supreme enjoyer with the flute player. He doesn't have to work. You remember the story of how in the time of the British people, one man, he wanted to know who is God. So he went to India and he asked everyone who is God. He went to every temple on every street corner. And he came to the conclusion that Krishna was God. Why?
All of the other personalities that he'd seen doing some kind of activity with it, was writing something, they had some
Occupation.
whereas he was just enjoying them.
Krishna was just enjoying. So Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, just like the fire that's sitting in one place, but by its energies, it's heating up the rest of the room and it's giving light to the rest of the place, etc. It doesn't have to go to you in that distance. Similarly, Krishna, while enjoying in Goloka Vrindavan, he doesn't need to work. His energies carry out everything that needs to be carried out. Although situated in one place, a fire can distribute its light and heat for some distance. Similarly, the supreme absolute personality of Godhead, although fixed in his transcendental abode, can diffuse his different energies everywhere. One time, Srila Prabhupada would very often give the pastimes of Birbal and Akbar, right? So Birbal and Akbar, you heard of them before? Birbal was a minister and he was a Hindu. And Akbar was actually a big, rich king, right? Very nice stories for children. You can Google it. So Prabhupada used to quote some of these stories. So one time, now this Muslim king, he very much liked Birbal, and kept him in the court as his minister. And even in the spare time, he took great pleasure in discussing various subject matters with Birbal. So one day, he said to Birbal, and normally his inquiries were a bit laden with sarcasm. So he said to Birbal, your God is a very funny person, that even though he has got so many people working under him of different intellects, from demigods to, human beings and Varnana, all these other heavenly beings, etc. How is it that, how am I to understand that when a devotee calls out to him, like when Draupadi did or Gajendra did, he will come personally? Isn't that not so intelligent for a person who has so many people at his command who could execute this various deeds that he needs to do? What do you think Birbal answered? Sometimes when somebody asks a question, uh, it is not the best thing to speak and answer, because sometimes certain answers are better digested if it's seen in action. So Birbal arranged with some of his friends. You see, that king Akbar, he had one prince, one of his sons, who was very dear to him, a young fellow. So Birbal arranged that at a certain time, some of Birbal's friends helped him. The lake in their kingdom was frozen. And at that time, they caught the prince and threw him in the center of the lake, just at the exact time when the king takes his morning walk with Birbal and his few close associates, around the kingdom. So naturally, it was timed so well that just as the king took the bend and he came to the lake, he saw the child, and his child was crying frantically for help. I'm drowning, help, help. So then the king, even though he was walking that morning with a whole lot of his ministers, etc., he immediately dived in, not even hesitating a second to remove any of his valuable jewels or anything like that. He just dived in to save his son. So when he came out with his son, Birbal asked him, "My lord, you were surrounded by all of us capable ministers. How is it that when your son screamed, you jumped in yourself to save you?" So Akbar he understood that that was the answer to his question, that out of the deep love and affection and the relationship of deep sentiment, the bond between the Lord and his devotees is so great that Krishna will come personally to carry what we lack and preserve what we have, as he promises in Bhagavad Gita. So his energies are everywhere in his abode, even though he's in Goloka. And although okay, read Avish.
All these entities are innumerable. They can be divided into the principal categories: internal potency, marginal potency, and external potency. There are hundreds and millions of sub-areas to each of these categories. The dominating demigods who are empowered to control and administer such natural phenomena are air, light, and rain, and are all classified within the marginal potency of the absolute person. Lesser living beings, including humans, also belong to the Lord's marginal potency. The material world is the creation of the Lord's external potency, and the spiritual sky, where the kingdom of God is situated, is a manifestation of his internal potency.
So there's internal potency, marginal, and external potency, Bahiranga Shakti. So the Tatastha Shakti and Hladini Shakti, right? So now what happens is that these different energies are there, but Krishna doesn't come under his inferior energy. When he comes under his Yoga Maya Shakti. Now, what happens is that the demigods everywhere, everyone is actually under the lower energies, the marginal energy, and the human beings, they are also in marginal energy, right? Now, what happens is that Krishna sometimes, to understand this concept of Krishna being such a mighty personality and being accessible to us, is a little difficult. Like one time, there was this person, and he wanted to know who is the greatest. So he approached a saint, and he asked the saint, "Who's the greatest?" And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj gives a story that the saint gave him a deity of Krishna without hesitation and told him, "He's the greatest, worship him." So this man, he was a bit confused, like such a big personality, such a big Lord, and he's contained in such a tiny deity. So he's thinking like, really, like this God can be, he's so big and he's so small, and it was hard for him to understand. So anyhow, the saintly person just gave him the deity and told him, "Worship Krishna." So he took the deity home and he was worshipping Krishna. So the saintly person told him, "Worship Krishna with Boga offering and Arti." So he took the deity home and he made the offering and he was worshipping like that. But in his cottage, there were rats. So a rat came in and the rat stole the offering that he made to Krishna. So he thought, wow, Here's the supreme personality of God, the all-powerful personality, and a rat stole from him. The rat must be more powerful, right? Because the rat stole the offering. They said, okay, he got a rat, and he started worshiping the rat because the rat is more powerful than the deity of Krishna now. So as he was worshiping the rat, then he was making the offering, and he had the rat there, and he was offering everything to the rat, and then he'd do the arti for the rat. The cat thought, how? It's an opportunity for me, a well-fed rat. Here's a very well-fed rat. So the cat came, and the cat ate the rat, captured the rat. And the man saw this, and he said, wow, the cat is more powerful. So then he took the cat, and he started to worship the cat. And the cat was being so nicely fed, the cat became so lethargic. And then a dog came, and the dog chased a cat. The man started worshiping the dog, right? But the dog became a lazy nuisance. So one day, the wife beat the dog. And so he thought, my wife is more powerful than the rat, the cat, and the dog. So let me worship my wife. But one day, his wife started to give him, there was a disagreement. So he screamed at his wife. She made a mistake, and he screamed screamed at her. Then he thought, my wife was more powerful than the rat, the cat, and the dog, but I am more powerful than my wife. See, she has to even listen to me. So then he put a murti of himself, made a murti of himself, and he started to worship the murti of himself. So the story is to explain that if you want to reach God and you don't follow the process that's coming in from the bona fide source, like the saintly person originally gave him the correct method of approaching Krishna. However, just like in the introduction of this very same book, the Isopanisad, Srila Prabhupada writes that this knowledge is not human made. It's coming from the spiritual realm. So if we want spiritual knowledge, we have to purify our senses by chanting, right? By the spiritual process of Cheto Darpanamarjanam, so that we could become proper receptacles in order to contain this. And I commonly quote the example of the tiger's milk. The tiger is a animal of passion, right? And its milk is very, very hot. So if you want to contain the milk of the tigress, you need a proper receptacle, because if you use a clay pot, it will crack. So you need a proper receptacle to hold that very hot milk from this animal in the mode of passion, the tigress, right? So similarly, for us to contain devotion or bhakti, which is non-different from Krishna, we have to make our heart a proper chamber, right? By the chanting of Hare Krishna, the Yuga Dharma that is given to us. Otherwise, this knowledge sort of takes a long time to become reawakened. And then we finished. Thus, the different energies of the Lord are present everywhere. Although the Lord and his energies are non-different, one should not mistake these energies for the supreme truth, right? Like that man, okay? Like that person. Nor should one wrongly consider that the Supreme Lord is distributed everywhere, impersonally, or that he loses his personal existence. Men are accustomed to reaching conclusions according to their capacity for understanding, but the Supreme Lord is not subject to our limited capacity for understanding. It is for this reason that the Upanishads warn us that no one can approach the Lord by his own limited potency. So, we are limited. And if we want to approach something, Prabhupada commonly gives the example that if you want to enter fire, you need a fire suit, right? Like the firemen, when they need to go and extinguish a fire, they need to put the proper attire on. They just can't go with ordinary attire. So similarly, in order to enter into the spiritual strata, we have to become spiritually eligible, as we are mentioning with the previous slide. So to approach Krishna, the devotional mentality has to be there. Once, a long time ago, in the stories of the Mahabharata, you'd come across two different people that approached Krishna differently and got a different result, right? Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was supposedly lying down and resting. And when he was resting, two Duryodhan came in before the war, this was. When Duryodhan entered the chambers of Krishna, he looked at Krishna, he sat himself by Krishna's feet because it was closer to the entrance. But then he was thinking in his heart, because his heart was impure. He was thinking, Krishna is no king, I'm a king, because he was, even though he was the prince and his father was still the king, even his father referred to him as King Duryodhan in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. So now what happens is that he looks at Krishna's feet and he thinks, Krishna is just a cowherd boy and I am a king, big Samraj. I don't have to sit at his feet. So he moved up to the chair, he moved up to sit at Krishna's head. Because then when Arjun came in later for the same purpose, when Arjun decided to sit himself at Krishna's feet, because everything is attainable when one approaches the lotus feet of Krishna, was Arjuna's understanding. So when Arjuna sat there, and Arjuna was able to attract Krishna by that devotion. When Krishna opened his eyes, Krishna saw Arjuna first. And Krishna said, no, I saw Arjun first. Therefore, Arjun, you ask what you want. What is it you want? Right? And Duryodhan said, no, but I came first. Right? And Krishna said, okay, you came first, you ask. Right? Let's be fair. Okay, you can ask. So when he asked Krishna for what? For Krishna's army. And when Arjuna, no, sorry, Krishna asked Arjuna to ask first because he saw him first. And when Arjuna said, Krishna's statement was, I will not fight on either side. I will either be present on one side and not fight, or my army will be on the other side. So Duryodhana had heard of Krishna's insurmountable army, and he wanted that. So you can approach Krishna, you can have direct audience with Krishna. And the common example is given of the old lady who was walking through the forest and she had that bundle of wood on her head, and the bundle fell and she said, Bhagavan, oh Bhagavan. And when Bhagavan appeared in front of her and asked, what can I do for you? And she said, please replace the bundle on her head. The bundle is a burden. You could ask him for anything. So you have to be so careful in what you ask, what we approach God for, because it's like it's so useless to go to someone who can give you everything and ask for something so insignificant that will actually is like helping you keep the anchor on and not helping you move forward in your life. So Krishna cannot be approached in that way. And then in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that not even the great rishis and asuras can know him. And what to speak of the asuras for whom there is no question of understanding the ways of the Lord. This fourth mantra of the Isopanisad very clearly suggests that the absolute truth, the ultimate, is ultimately the absolute person. Otherwise, there would have been no need to mention so many details in support of his personal features. So God is actually a person. The highest category of understanding God is that he is a person. right? That he's a person, is not impersonal. He even though he's not involved directly in most activities, and he's sitting in Goloka Vrindavan and enjoying himself there with all his associates, he can still execute so many things. But the asuras, they do not understand this. And what comes to mind is Kalyavan. You heard of Kalyavan? Kalyavan was an asura. He's actually from Greece, Prabhupada said, and he was those were the first Greek invasions. So when Jarasandha, Jarasandha was the father-in-law of Kamsa. And when Jarasandha, taking the side of Kamsa, decided to attack Mathura, the city of Mathura, then what happened was he fought Krishna 18 times and lost. He was unable to capture Krishna. Now, can you believe 18 times and he still didn't learn that Krishna is inconquerable, right? At the loss of so many lives, so many akshohinis of armies, etc., etc. So, because of demoniac mentality of that I am the most powerful and not submitting to Krishna, then what happened was that he decided to call on Kalyavan, right? Kalyavan from Greece. So when Kalyavan came from Greece to attack Mathura, Kalyavan had a special benediction. Kalyavan's benediction was that no Vishnu incarnation will kill him. So sure, Krishna knows everything. Krishna knew that. So when Kalyavan approached Krishna, he was mocking Krishna. You are Rancho, you run away from the battlefield. That's why you got the name Rancho. So, every time Jarasandha is attacking you, you running away. They're not seeing it that Jarasandha cannot capture Krishna. They see it the way they want to. So Krishna ran into this cave, and Krishna knew that from the previous yugas, Muchakunda, a sage, was sleeping there. So Krishna took out, in the cave, it's dark, it's not well lit. So Krishna took out his bright yellow chadar and he put it over Muchakunda's body, was sleeping Muchakunda. Muchakunda had helped the demigods a long time ago, and he had the benediction when he fought the asuras on behalf of the demigods. Indra gave him the benediction. You can go and take rest undisturbed. And anyone who disturbs you, that person you can kill by your glance. So when Kalyavan entered the cave, he thought this was Krishna hiding in the cave. So what happened was that he kicked Krishna, nice and solid, supposedly Krishna. He kicked Muchakunda covered by Krishna's chadar, thinking it's Krishna. And when he did that, Muchakunda opened his eyes. He was not an incarnation of Krishna, and he burned him. So Krishna tricked him. So, like Prabhupada was explaining in the beginning, Krishna cannot be caught, right, by anybody. And clearly, Krishna is a person. He's not impersonal. That's why all these details are being given. Although the individual parts and parcels of the Lord's potencies have all the symptoms of the Lord himself, they have limited spheres of activity and are therefore limited. The parts and parcels are never equal to the whole. Therefore, they cannot appreciate the Lord's full potency. Under the influence of material nature, foolish and ignorant living beings who are but parts and parcels of the Lord try to conjecture about the Lord's transcendental position. Sri Isopanisad warns of the futility of trying to establish the identity of the Lord through mental speculation. One should try to learn of transcendence from the Lord himself and the supreme sources of the Vedas, for the Lord alone has the knowledge of transcendence. So, Prabhupada is making another point here. In addition to the fact that Krishna is a person, he's saying that we are part and parcel, we fall in the marginal energy. And as beings that fall in the marginal energy, we can't be equal to Krishna. And what happens if we try to be equal to Krishna? There's a story of Pondarak Krishna Vasudev. Pondarak, he was actually an amazing Shiva devotee. So he prayed to Lord Shiva for 12 years. He performed great austerities. And the benediction he asked for was to have Krishna's features, to have a form like Krishna. So when he got this benediction from Lord Shiva, he became so proud because he looked exactly like Krishna. So everybody, when he walked through the village, everybody thought this was Krishna, and they all bowed down. They're bringing offerings to him. So he said, and this is what he wanted, because everybody in the material world is trying to be God, right? So all contaminated beings are thinking they are Ishwar. So Pondarak was like that also. And Pondarak, he had the name Pondarak Krishna Vasudev. That was his name. So all his devotees, they chanted Pondarak Krishna Vasudev, Pondarak Krishna Vasudev. And he had the audacity to send a messenger to the court of Mathura, where Krishna was present, to say, "You imposter, why are you keeping the weapons of? Why are you keeping the insignia of Vishnu? Just surrender to me, and I will forgive you. Just give up those club, conch shell, and the club, the conch shell, and the lotus flower, right, of Vishnu that you are holding." So when he went, so then Krishna decided to go meet Pondarak. So Krishna went to go meet Pondarak. And when Krishna came in front of Pondarak, here was Pondarak. He had an Kastuba jewel on his chest. He had a Sharangi bow in his hand, Krishna's bow. He had the disc. He had the club. He had the lotus, and he had the conch shell and the bow. He's holding it. Everyone was worshiping him. He looked just like Krishna. He was dressed just like Krishna. So Krishna said to him, "I have now come to fulfill your desire that you wanted me to give up Vishnu's insignia. So I'm now going to give up my disc first." The disc went, he cut his egg, sorted him out. And that was the end of Pondarak Krishna Vasudev. He actually, by the mercy of Krishna, he got Sayujya Mukti. He got the form of Krishna in Vaikuntha planets by Krishna's mercy. Sarupya Mukti. Sarupya Mukti. Rupa means form, Sarup, right? So what happened was that so if the part and parcel, like Prabhupada is saying here, tries to be equal to Krishna, this is what happens. Even Balaram showed us this by example. Balaram one time borrowed Krishna's peacock feather and flute, and he was playing Krishna for the day. And then the demon came and kicked him so hard. And Balaram thought, it's not very nice to be Krishna, because you become the target of so many things. So he gave it up. So Balaram is the Adi Guru, and Balaram is teaching us by example, because some things we heard in the beginning can only be learned by example. So he's teaching us that this is how it is. You can't be Krishna. Just be happy being Das Anadas Anadas Anadas. Read, Sean.
Every part and parcel of the complete whole is endowed with some particular energy to act according to the Lord's will. When the part and parcel living entity forgets his particular activities under the Lord's will, he is considered to be in Maya, illusion. Thus, from the very beginning, Sri Isopanisad warns us to be very careful to play the part designated for us by the Lord. This does not mean that the individual soul has no initiative of his own. Because he is part and parcel of the Lord, he must partake of the initiative of the Lord as well. When a person properly utilizes his initiative or active nature with intelligence and understanding that everything is the Lord's potency, he can revive his original consciousness, which was lost due to association with Maya, the external entity.
Very good. So, so the living entity, he has to partake of the initiative of the Lord as well. When a person properly utilizes initiative with intelligence and understanding that everything is the Lord's potency, he can revive his original consciousness, which is the goal of human life. So the part and parcel is he has some ability to be like God, just like a spark that falls out from a fire, has some ability to burn in a smaller capacity, as does the fire. Or the other example is a drop of water from the ocean is salty, as the ocean is salty, but it doesn't contain, it is not equal in quantity, but in quality. So there's so many examples like that. You can take a sugar particle from a packet of sugar, and it has, it has the same qualities in minute quantity, but not in its complete quality. So the living entity has to understand this and thereby become satisfied in his position as the servitor and not as the supreme Lord. And the conclusion is, Srila Prabhupada explains that all power is obtained from the Lord, therefore each particular power must be utilized to execute the will of the Lord and not otherwise. The Lord can be known by one who has adopted such a submissive service attitude. Perfect knowledge means knowing the Lord in all his features, knowing his potencies and knowing how these potencies work by his will. These matters are described by the Lord in Bhagavad Gita, the essence of all Upanishads. So this knowledge is there. It has to be received in a proper chain, right? And the student has to be willing. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj gave the story of Kalu and Lalu. You heard this story? Kalu and Lalu were two sons of a grocer. And the grocer, he had a very good shop going. So he made a challenge because these two sons were so naughty. They were like really mischievous. They always found a reason not to learn, right? When someone came to teach them, they deliberately found a reason not to learn. So the father, he put up a challenge and he said, all right, whoever can teach my sons something, even the numbers from 1 to 100 at least, if you can succeed in teaching, because he's a grocer, he needs heirs to his business, if they can at least count that much, he'll be satisfied for now. So one Brahmana, he took up the challenge to teach Kalu and Lalu. So every time he tried to teach them, they purposely tried, not to learn. It's like it was intentional. So the saintly person, the Brahmana, he decided, let me trick them into learning. So one day he said, let's go to the field. Let's just go for a walk. Come, we take a break from studying, cool your brains off, and let's go walk. So as they went to the field, then in the distance, they saw a cow. But the cow was facing them sideways. So he said to them, can you count how many feet? How many feet does that cow have? Is it 2? Is it 4? Just check how many feet that, because in the cow standing sideways, it looks like it has 2, but we know cows have 4 feet. So he challenged the boys. So they were saying, no, what? The cow has, I think it's 1, man. So then so the other boy said, no, it's 3, maybe it's 3 and we can't see it, First, then they came to because they were so silly, right? So then they came to a conclusion, maybe it's 2. Then that one boy, a smart aleck, so to speak, he said, can't you see the teacher's tricking us to learn because he wants us to go, because as they were approaching the cow closer, and the saint was encouraging, count nicely. I mean, like check nicely. Is it for real? What you're saying. So then they caught up with him, and then they said, no, he's trying to trick us into learn. And then they deliberately said he has 7 feet, 8 feet, giving the wrong answers. So then the saint said, okay, you boys, you'll not, this lesson is not working for them. He's going to try something else. So the thing is, you can have a good teacher. The teacher has the desire to teach, but if the student doesn't have the desire to learn, the lesson won't fructify in the heart of the student. So what happened was these boys, they used to like to smoke, drink, and do all naughty things. So when the saint took them to the ashram and he was sleeping, then they decided that he's sleeping. They climbed out of their beds and they went out and they started smoking. And then they came back in and they pretended to sleep. So when he woke up, there was so much smoke smell that he woke up coughing, the saint. So then he said, where have you two boys been? You weren't sleeping here. They said, no, we've been sleeping here all the time. We're sleeping with you. So he said, where's all the smoke smell coming from? He said, we don't know, maybe dacoits were trying to come rob us or something. There's smoke smell here. So then he said, but the smoke smell, but when they're speaking, dacoits must have come there. So their hands had smoke smell. So the saint said, but the smoke smell is coming from your very own fingers. They said, no, it's not our fingers. So the moral of it says somebody else must have come and smoked the cigarette from our hands. Now, I mean, such a stupid good thing, to say to a saintly person, that somebody else came and smoked the cigarette from our hands and made us the culprit. So the gist of the story is, the moral of the story is, that when a person is of that mentality, they will never take ownership of a problem. That I am ignorant and I need to learn. So at the beginning of any lesson, one has to acknowledge that it is that I need to learn this. If one does not acknowledge that I need to learn from this book something, then however many jewels are contained in it, it won't enter into us. It won't. The magic won't happen from the pages of these books. So that's the story of this mantra 4, Kalu and Lalu. Yes, that's Kalu and Lalu. Does anyone have any questions, comments? So the first, yes.
Last week and this week when I was reading Mantra 4, I was struggling so much to try and link it to the previous 3 because it was like such a nice book. I heard that class, how they all fitted in together, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out how it fits in.
Because it's starting a new theme. Yeah, the books are like that. They cluster into different themes, and this theme is now supporting that theme. It's different, but it is the same. So it supports the theme. So some of the things in today's lesson is that Krishna cannot be caught by any materialist, right? What else? His energies are threefold. Even though he's in his abode, everything is happening just like how fire is in one place and heat and smoke is, even though it emanates from the fire, it does the job, right? Far and wide. So Krishna exists in Goloka Vrindavan and his energies execute everything. Krishna cannot be attained by any asuras or materialistic persons, and Krishna is a person. He has a personal form. So those are the points for this mantra 4, and that even all the living entities are subservient, cannot become equal to the Lord is the other point. And The Lord can only be known by unalloyed devotional service, as is in this conclusion. It can be known by one who has adopted such a submissive service attitude. What is perfect knowledge? It means knowing Krishna in all his features, knowing his potencies, and knowing that how these potencies work by his will. There's all his potencies and how they're operating by his will. It doesn't have to come personally and do it, do things. But purchased by devotion, it does come personally. As was in the story of Akbar and his son that Birbal taught him. Anything to add?
So we can connect this verse to the first three, because the more you know Krishna in his by his mercy, more and more completely, the more you know he's complete, the more you want to serve him, which means it becomes easier to follow the Ishavasya principle, because now it's not just you're not following the Ishavasya. Let's say if you're following Isopanisad systematically, you learn the verse, the principle, and it's okay. I need to, everything belongs to God, and then I need to, use everything in His service, right? So you using your intellect to surrender. When you come to this verse, now it's by devotion and by devotional sentiments that Krishna reveals himself. So now when Krishna reveals himself, now it's a heart relationship. Therefore, it becomes easier to follow the Ishavasa principle, because now it's not just head, but now it's a heart. So therefore, it becomes easier to now accept Krishna and then surrender to Krishna.
The powerful demigods cannot approach him. You remember when we did that chart that showed Goloka, Vrindavan, and all the different planetary systems, etc.? Then Nishangananda Prabhu mentioned that the Acharyas teach us that the middle planetary systems of Earth is like the door, is the doorway. So it's only by entering Earth and following the Yuga Dharma here can the pathway or the doorway to Goloka be attained. So the demigods, in order to approach him, they come and they take part in his pastimes. Brahma came and took birth as Haridas Thakur. In Krishna Leela, Lord Brahma, he took birth as the hill, Nandagram. And Lord Shiva took birth as, I think, Varshana, right? The hills in Vrindavan, because they wanted the dust of the Lord to be on their heads. So they performed like so many years of tapasya to get that, just that opportunity to be close to Krishna. If you listen to my Shivaratri class, I go in detail in that on those aspects. So the demigods, they also have to come. And then, this month of July was the month of Ratha Yatra. And we find that in the pastimes of Lord Jagannath in Orissa, that the midnight arati is performed by the devatas, right? That all kinds of divine beings come to perform the midnight arati, right? Jagannath does not sleep at that time. And in the stories of Lord Jagannath, there was one time the priest, the head priest, he was walking home and he felt like there's somebody else on the road. And when then he saw this huge person, like 16 feet tall or something. And then he ran up to the person and then he was calling out to say, Haribol, Haribol. And then the person sort of noticed and out of his mercy sort of waited, because you can well imagine how much running you have to do to catch it one step of such a person, right? And then the person revealed himself to be Vibhishan, right? And then the head priest, he said, but how will can you give me some token of remembrance of you? So Vibhishan opened his armlet and gave it to him, which was so huge that he couldn't even drag it because it was bigger than him as head priest. So apparently that amulet is still being worshipped in Jagannath Puri because somehow or the other he got all his friends to bring it and take it to his family to show them that these higher beings do come and they worship Lord Jagannath at this time. There are many stories of how one goddess was coming and she came late. So Lord Baladev, he scolded her, admonished her for coming late because you don't take the worship of Lord Jagannath so lightly that you go in your own sweet time. Aarti is happening at this time, you be there early, so to speak. So because she had come in late by the chastisement of Balaram, she had to take her birth as a Devi Dasi in one of the houses of the pujaris there for many years and served there. So these higher beings, they cannot approach him, but we also understand the pastime of Lakshmi Devi. Lakshmi Devi, she went to Vrindavan and performed so many austerities to get the audience of Lord Krishna, but she couldn't even enter the Rasalila, right? Because to give up their Aishwarya and to enter into the, Ashlishla Pada Ratam Pinastumam kind of mood, then it may not be so easy if someone does not practice the process of bhakti yoga as is prescribed step by step. And Prabhupada gave the definition of sincere. What is the meaning of one who is sincere? One who is sincere is one who follows the bigger rules and the smaller rules. Right? So it's not that, okay, we pick and choose it. Okay, I'm good enough. I'm doing, this, and this, but nobody's going to notice if I don't do this, and this, like that. So he's swifter than the mind and can overcome all others running. If Krishna wants to appear in a flash in front of a person, he will. There's the story of the old man who was climbing the Himalayas to go. He was climbing to see Naranarayan in Badrinath. You know that story, right? In Bhagavad Gita class, we always say in the beginning. So there was. It was a season when everybody locked up in Badrinath, it gets too cold and they come down. But this one old man, he was endeavoring he climbed the hill after arduous endeavor, and he reached the top just at the time when everybody had closed and gone down. And they go down for like 3-4 months because that's how long it takes for that season to be over. A young man appeared, and what did he do? He told the old man, okay, let's play a game of chess in the meantime. So they played the game of chess, and the duration took all that time. Right? So if Krishna wants, he can overcome all others running because he's in control of time, of space, and so many things. So he can appear in a flash. When Draupadi called him, he came immediately. When Gajendra needed him, he was there immediately. There was no delay. He never gets stuck in a traffic jam or anything. It is just that the sincerity of the cry of the practitioner can urge him to come immediately. So we have to understand that Krishna is that accessible through the path of devotion, which we are so mercifully handed, by Srila Prabhupada. Okay, any last thoughts, corrections, comments? Yes, Prabhu?
Just talk a little bit about the step by step that we said we also follow step by step in the Bhakti Yoga process.
Srila Prabhupada wanted us to chant a minimum of 16 rounds, follow the 4 regulative principles, and study his books. Right? So you study his books and to the best of your ability, serve in whatever capacity you can, to the best of your ability, and thereby cultivate the mood of dasana, dasana, das in the core of one's being. And one will learn many things in these books. Like when we go after this book to the Nectar of Devotion, so many nice things will be revealed on how to follow in a nice way to reach Krishna quicker, like that. Anything else? Prem, say something. So Krishna is approachable. He's our best friend and well-wisher, and thereby we can surrender to him. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada.